Good morning. I'm Pastor Tully here with my Wednesday morning message. I want to tell you a story today. It's a story about my car. Her name was Grace. It's also a story about horses, and it's also a story about the church and the pandemic, even though this story is from 2003. See, I got my car in the year 2000. It was sort of a high school graduation gift and a going away to college gift. But mostly my previous car was pretty unreliable and I needed something better for college. I loved that car. I drove that car for more than 10 years. I drove that car until it cost more to keep her going than she was worth. Now, as a 19-year-old, when I got that car, I thought that the only reason I got that car was because of the grace of God, and so I named her Grace. Grace was a 2000 silver Passat with a stick shift and a roof rack. If you know anything about me, I drive today a silver Passat with a stick shift and a roof rack. A little bit of a theme there. Anyways, this story is from 2003. Now, this was before YouTube, before everyone was on the internet. I had a cell phone, but actually I went and disconnected my cell phone store. I went to the cell phone store and I cut off my plan. I was leaving the country and I didn't want to pay $40 a month for a cell phone plan that I wasn't going to use. That's right, I was leaving the country. I was going to study abroad in Europe. I was going to Copenhagen, Denmark, where they speak Danish, not Dutch, like my college roommate tried to convince me. I had packed my suitcases full of clothes. I had enough underwear for the whole time I was gone. I had a laptop computer to take with me. I had a travel guidebook. Again, these are things that you did back in 2003. My plane tickets were from August to December. And the only real question that remained was, what about Grace? What about my car? For that, we have to rewind back a few more years. Growing up, we had horses. We lived way out in the country on 22 acres of land, and my sister and I, we competed in horse shows across the state and across the southeast. My sister, she was really good at it. She was state champion several years in a row, and in fact, today, 25 years later, she still teaches kids how to ride horses as her profession. Anyways, I tell you about the horses because we had a barn at our house. It wasn't a huge cattle barn or anything. It had 5 stalls, a hay rack, a tack room, a place to wash your horses. It was maybe as long as a truck, as like a semi-truck. But it was big enough to put a car inside of it. And so that was my plan. I was going to park Grace in the barn. I looked up on the internet what to do, and this is, of course, the wild, wild west of the internet, way back then. Didn't really know if what I was reading was trustworthy or not. Of course, the Volkswagen website had nothing to say that was helpful. But the advice I got was to leave the gas tank 1/3 full, get a cover for the car, and to disconnect the battery. So the day of my big flight to Europe, I drove Grace into the barn, I unplugged the battery, I said my goodbyes, and I put the cover over the car. This was the end of summer. 5 months later, after many, many adventures, 5 new countries visited, and even getting this new shirt, I finally came home. And the first thing I did when I got home was I went out to the barn. Now, it was winter by this point, and it was pretty cold. I pulled that dust-covered car cover off of Grace. I lifted the hood, and I reconnected the battery. I left the hood up just in case something went wrong. I got into the car and, after sitting still for 5 months, that new car smell had sort of returned. I took the key, this key right here. 20 years later, I've still got the key, not the car. I was nervous. Would she start? Would the engine explode? What would happen? I didn't know. I didn't know anything about cars. So I put the key in. And that telltale Ding, ding, ding. She had power. I put my foot down on the clutch and I shifted it into neutral. I carefully turned the key one click and the radio came on. 2 clicks, lights, fans, all kinds of noises. And then carefully, 3 clicks. Rum, 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 rum. It took a little bit longer than usual, but she started. I was amazed. And then I rubbed my hand across the dashboard as if to say, I'm sorry and I missed you. I drove immediately to the gas station, and as a form of an apology, I filled her up with premium gas that day. I think I got an oil change the next day, and everything was fine. I drove that car many more miles. I drove that car for years living in Atlanta. I drove that car all the way across the country when I moved to Arizona. I love that car. So what does all of this have to do with the church? Well, for my car Grace, coming out of long-term storage, that was easy. Just plug in the battery and a new tank of gas and she was good to go. But for the church, for our ministries and programs, many of which have been in long-term storage for the last 12 months of this pandemic. Now, if we're lucky, someone took the time to unplug the battery and put the car cover on. But now as the pandemic is waning and we can all see the light at the end of the tunnel, many of us, you know someone who's been vaccinated, maybe you've been vaccinated. Restarting church won't be as easy as restarting my car was. Ministry programs won't be fixed by a new tank of gas. An oil change won't solve all of your Sunday school problems. Many parts of the church never went into long-term storage. Pastoral care, it looks different today with more phone calls and Zoom calls than face-to-face visits, but trust me, people still care and they still pray. Bible studies look different. And so as we begin to restart the church, it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of planning. But with God's guidance, she will restart. Amen. I'll see you next week. Take care.